I'm Geothermals, and I'm going to be ranking every single Modern Warfare 3 weapon in a tier list. If you want to see more COD, Warzone, or Black Ops 6 content like this, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, turn on post notifications for future uploads, and let's get right into the video. Just a quick explanation on how this tier list is going to work. I'm going to be taking in the multiplayer meta, Warzone meta, zombies meta, if the weapon was part of those metas, how much it affected the meta, if it received any nerfs, stuff like that. Is it still good, longevity? That's kind of how I'm going to be looking at each weapon and where I'm going to be putting them in their tier list. Starting off with the Bal 27 assault rifle here, this thing was a lot of fun to use, but did not last long in the Warzone meta, and was not very good in multiplayer. It was still a decent weapon, but definitely not amazing, so I think it deserves a solid B tier. Next up here we have the MCW assault rifle. This assault rifle is absolutely amazing, and I believe it does deserve S tier. And the reason why is because, one, it's the best assault rifle in ranked, nothing can touch it all year long. It was the best weapon in the beta and has been good all year long in multiplayer, and for 2-3 seasons it was also really good in Warzone as a close range weapon with its conversion kit. So I feel like it's an all-round amazing weapon and was good all the way through the year in most modes, and that's why it deserves S tier. The next weapon here, the Holger 26, is a lot of fun to use with its slower fire rate but doing more damage, though the ADS speed and sprint to fire speed is very slow, which does hurt its playstyle, and that's why I think it's going to be a B tier weapon. It is lower than the Bal 27 though, because it was never a meta weapon in multiplayer or Warzone or even zombies. Next we have the MTZ-556. This is a better version of the Holger. It has faster fire rate and way better mobility and ADS speed. A little bit lower damage, that's okay. But the reason why it's way better is because it was in the Warzone meta for about a season or two, and it's a lot of fun to use in multiplayer, having very low recoil. So I'm going to put it in A tier. Then we have the Ram 7, which was an absolutely unbeatable AR, especially comboed up with the Ram 9 when it first came out. But it got a huge nerf, and it hasn't felt the same ever since. It hasn't been in the Warzone meta, it feels very strange to use in multiplayer, and was never good in zombies. So this is why I think I'm going to put it in C tier for now, but we may come back to this one. Then we have the BP-50. This thing is absolutely insane and a really nice piece of ground loot in Warzone, along with its conversion kit basically turning it into an SMG. The fast fire rate and really good damage and good magazine capacity along with good mobility makes this thing an amazing gun to use, and that's why I'm going to put it in A tier. Then we have the DG56 Burst Assault Rifle. This thing was a lot of fun to use. I don't know if it was a meta in Warzone at all. It might have been for a very short time. This thing was, like I said, a lot of fun to use, but it got a huge nerf and it has not felt the same ever since. It used to be a 1-burst, but now it is a 2-burst kill, and it just is really irrelevant in the whole, weapon conversation in Modern Warfare 3 or Warzone. This is an automatic S tier, the STG-44. This thing has been insane the past 2 seasons as one of the best long-range weapons in the game. Along with it as a really nostalgic 5 from the OG CODs, and when it was in Vanguard, it was one of the best guns in that game as well. A lot of fun to use with a good fire rate, really good damage, very low recoil, and decent mobility. And again, this is going to go in S tier because it's been absolutely insane in Warzone and even multiplayer. Next up is this game's version of the AK-47 or the SVA-545. This thing's a lot of fun to use. It is really strange though that it is only good when you're using it in burst mode. It's not very good in multiplayer. I found it to have a really slow TTK when I was using it. I did like it in the beta though. And like I said, you can only do good with it in Warzone when you're using burst mode. So for now, I think I'm going to put this in A tier, but this might change. Finally, we have the FR 5.56. This is going to go right next to the DG56, as it's basically the same weapon. I would say it's a little better. It does have lower magazine capacity, but it does more damage and has more fire rate and has less recoil. So this is going to go right next to the DG, just over it. Now starting off with the SMGs, we have the AMR-9. This weapon was kind of forgot about. It was a meta in Warzone for a very small period of time. It's just a little strange. It feels like a AR SMG. I feel like that'd be a good thing, but it really isn't. Its slower fire rate and lower damage really hurts it, so I think I'm going to put it in low C tier. Then we have the HRM9. This is by far better. This thing was a lot of fun and was meta for about 2 seasons in Warzone. It had a really good TTK. It was the early point in the game where mobility on SMGs really began to matter. It was fast fire rate. It was overall just a pretty good gun. So I'm gonna put it in high B tier. I think that is fitting for this weapon. Now for the Ram 9. This thing was also incredibly broken when paired with the Ram 7, but it also received a nerf. After receiving its nerf though, it wasn't as harshly nerfed as the Ram 7, so it's not as bad as that. I still think it's a very viable weapon. I'm not sure what it's like in Warzone these days, but it is pretty good in multiplayer, so I think I'm going to put it low B tier. And the HRM9 is pretty similar, so I think I'm actually going to move that down with the Ram 9 to low B tier. Next up we have the Rival 9. This is an automatic S tier, as it was insane in Warzone for about a season and a half when the game was first coming out. Along with that, a couple of seasons ago, they released the Burst Conversion Kit, which broke it in multiplayer. That thing was insane. This thing's also the best SMG in ranked multiplayer, and it's a really good SMG in normal multiplayer as well, as it has a lot more range than some of these other ones. There are a couple other ones that are better than it with mobility and higher damage, but I think with this thing's fire rate as well, it's just untouchable. There are a few SMGs that I would say are better than it, but it definitely deserves an S tier for it being a meta SMG all the way through Modern Warfare 3's life cycle. Next up we have the Static HV. When this thing came out, it was insane. It was the best SMG, and it still is the best SMG as far as I know in Warzone. So this also gets an S tier. It is a better version of the Rival 9. It's not in ranked multiplayer, but it definitely is a better version than the Rival 9 for multiplayer and Warzone. Just has more magazine capacity, better mobility, and I think a little bit lower damage, but just that magazine and better mobility just makes it way better. So it deserves an S tier, and I'm putting it above the Rival 9. The FJX Horus was a really good gun when it came out. Its fast fire rate but lower damage and really good mobility along with higher magazine capacity made it a beam and really easy to use. It shredded in Warzone and multiplayer, and that conversion kit made it really good too. It was also really good in zombies. So I think I'm going to put it in low A. It might move up, I'm not sure. I still really enjoy this weapon to this day, so I think it is a very good weapon and deserves its A tier spot. For the WSP9, I was never really good with this thing, but from all the clips and from what I was using with this thing, I could tell in the right person's hands, this thing was going to be insane. Its slower fire rate, really low recoil, but high damage and good magazine and mobility made it insane, along with good hip fire spread, making it a straight beam and really easy to hit your shots when you were hip firing, was just insane in Warzone and multiplayer. This thing deserves its high A tier spot, and that's where I'm going to put it. The Striker is a very interesting weapon. It was strange to use as I thought it was going to be good, but after using it, its slower fire rate with slightly increased damage didn't really do anything to the weapon. It was just on the weaker side because of the slow fire rate and not too high of damage number compared to the other weapons. So I'm going to put it mid B tier. Now the Super is an automatic S tier weapon. This thing shredded the Warzone meta to pieces, as it could kill a whole squad in one 40 round mag. It has low recoil, crazy range, good damage, and until the Static HV, the highest mobility in Modern Warfare 3. This thing definitely deserves its S tier spot, and it's not even a question or a debate if it should be below S tier. Now for the WSP Swarm, I really did enjoy this weapon, and it was the closest we would get to the MAC-10 from Cold War. I loved that weapon. This thing was really fun to use dual wield in multiplayer and Warzone, and even on its own was good in multiplayer, and also had its fair share of time in that Warzone meta conversation. So I think just off of that, I'm going to be putting it in low A tier. And finally, the Striker 9. This thing is just a superior version of the Striker in every way. A little higher recoil, but faster fire rate, more damage / DPS. Along with that, it had better mobility and just better magazine size. This thing was also really good in Warzone meta for a period of time when the Godzilla skins came out, I believe, and is pretty good in multiplayer. Again, it's just a 10 times better version of the Striker, and I don't really understand why the Striker exists when you have the Striker 9. Next up, we have the Battle Rifles. This is going to be a pretty short little section here. The first one is going to be the D tier. This thing just came out and it is insane. I mean, it hasn't been out for long, so we don't know what it's like longevity wise, but it's definitely an S tier. I think it's right behind the STG. It might be a better long range weapon, but I think the STG is more versatile with larger magazine size, faster fire rate, stuff like that. And I'm actually going to move the MCW. I forgot about this thing up here. It's going to go right above the Rival 9, as these things were just better during their primes and or are better currently. So I think I'm going to move that down here. And yeah, the D tier is going to be high S tier. Next up, we have the MTZ762. This is going to be another high A. I think I'm going to put it below the WSP9 because it wasn't as good as the WSP9 when this thing was in its prime. It was a good long-range killer when it was, in its prime, when it had its buff that made it really good. It also was a really nice battle rifle in multiplayer. It's actually one of my favorites. So I think a higher A is where it belongs. It's better than these currently in multiplayer and Warzone. But yeah, right. I think it belongs here. The next weapon here is the BAS-B. This thing was really good in the first season of Warzone and preseason. But then, ever since when they started releasing new weapons and buffing things, it kind of just got forgotten about. No one really talks about it. So honestly, it's gonna go mid B. It's definitely not as good as the SVA and better than these. So I think I'm gonna put it here. It's still viable. It's definitely good, but I think it's just a worse version of the MTZ762. I can't hold back my opinion with this one. The Sidewinder is terrible. It sucks so bad. It did have like a 2-week stint where it was really good with its conversion kit, but they nerfed the conversion kit for it really fast, and once that nerf was over, it went right back to where it belongs. A D tier weapon. Absolutely terrible. This thing was a pain to get camos for. The slow fire rate, the freaking terrible recoil, everything, the bad mag size, it just all was so bad with this weapon, and it will have some, friends in D tier later on in this tier list. The SOA Subverter was a lot of fun to use. I really enjoyed this weapon, and I think it's going to be a mid B tier weapon though, because it did have a very short stint in its meta time in Warzone. I think I'm going to move the SCVA above the BAL-27 now I think about it. But for the SOA Subverter, I really did like this thing. It's a little bit of a better version of the BAS-B. It's got better fire rate, a little bit lower magazine size. It's got better damage, lower recoil. In general, it's a good weapon, but kind of mid compared to the other ones that have just been better for longer. Now moving on to shotguns, starting off with the Haymaker. First of all though, shout out to the Haymaker from MW3. Absolutely love that weapon, and I would love for it to come back in a future COD. But for the Haymaker in MW3, it's a fully automatic shotgun, making it really easy to use. And it did have a very short stint where it was good in Warzone. But its very, fast fire rate really makes it run out of ammo fast, and the lower damage at longer ranges at anything over 5 meters makes it very hard to get kills with, especially when you're not playing hardcore. So I think this weapon is going to go in mid B tier. Next up we have the Reclaimer shotgun. This is going to be I think this is going to go high A. As with its conversion kit and multiplayer, this thing's disgusting. It's retarded. I don't know why they decided to put a dual wield shotgun into multiplayer or Warzone. That doesn't make sense. That just sounds broken speaking about it. But it was really good. This thing was a 1 or 2 shot at one point in Warzone. I remember using this thing. This thing was insane. But it was a shorter stint, and just because of how good it was when it was meta, I think it's going to be a high A along with the WSP9. Next up we have the Riveter. This thing sucks. I'm sorry, this thing sucks. This is definitely the worst shotgun in the game. If you're not playing hardcore, if you're playing hardcore, this thing's probably an A tier weapon. But if you're playing core, or if you're going into Warzone or whatever, there isn't even a reason to use this thing unless you're going for camos. So this thing's going to go down in D tier. This thing sucks. Low range. It's got a decent magazine size. The fire rate, the pellet spread's weird. Recoil is weird. The Haymaker's just way better than it. So it's going to be a D tier. It's going to sit there right along with the Sidewinder. Now for the Lockwood 680 shotgun, my personal favorite shotgun from Modern Warfare 3. I would love to see the shotgun do better. It was really good in zombies. I don't think it was good in Warzone. So, wait. No, I think it was actually. It had a really good stint in Warzone early on when it was good with tac stance and hipfire. So, with that information and it being good in multiplayer as well, my favorite shotgun in multiplayer, I think I'm going to put it as a low A tier weapon. Alright, next up here we have the Marksmen Rifles. The first one being the MCW 6.8. This thing, D tier. This thing's terrible. By far the worst marksman rifle. It sucks. I don't know. It might actually be... I'm going to say it's worse than the Sidewinder. These things really don't have much of a reason. They don't have much of a ranking down here. They're all just bad. This thing sucks. It's got way too much recoil. Really bad magazine size. It does not do as much damage as some of these other marksman rifles. It just sucks. It's definitely the worst and deserves a D tier. Then we have the KVD Enforcer. I think this is going to be a C tier. It's not as bad as the MCW 6.8, but it's not very good still. I think it's right here with some of these other weapons, just forgotten. They're not amazing, but not terrible either. It's, like I said, better than the MCW 6.8, but not as good as a couple of these other ones. So I think a C tier is where it belongs. Now for the MTZ Interceptor. I really love this gun. It was actually the gun I dropped my first nuke with in MW3. It is amazing in multiplayer, a one-shot and maybe a two-shot depending on the range. Along with that, it was a one or two shot, I can't remember, to the head in Warzone when Warzone was first happening in Modern Warfare 3. This thing is insane, so I think I'm going to put it a low B though, as it's not very good now. Next up, we have the Kar 98K, nostalgic vibes from 2019 here. This thing was awesome. I have a friend who absolutely loves this weapon here, especially its version in 2019. This is gonna go a high A. Actually, you know what? This is gonna go S tier. This, I believe, actually to be one of the best weapons to quickscope with in multiplayer. Along with that, it is probably the best sniper, you could say sniper, or marksman, you know what I mean, in Warzone. It's absolutely insane. It was a one-shot for quite some time. A lot of fun to use. It's very easy to use too, so I think it's going to be an S tier. And, you know, it deserves to go above the MCW in Rival 9. Now, the DM56 is a sleeper weapon. No one talks about it enough. That conversion kit in multiplayer makes it a straight destroyer, being a one-burst weapon, and that makes me want to put it in low A. But it's not very good in Warzone, actually really bad in Warzone, and zombies. So that actually kind of makes me want to put it in high B, and I think I'm going to do that, to be honest. It just isn't good enough in those other modes to justify a high or low A tier placement. And starting off with the LMGs here, we have the Holger 26. This is a weapon I haven't used in a really long time. I did the Grandmastery on it and stuff. I got its camos when the game first came out. This is, I think, one of those weapons that was kind of forgotten about. I'm not sure if it was good in Warzone, actually, at all. I can't remember. I think this is honestly going to go right there here in C tier. With like the FR and stuff. It's kind of a forgotten weapon. I don't hear many people talk about it, so it's definitely the Ram 7 was really good in Warzone for a period of time, and I'm not sure if this was, so I think a C tier is where it belongs. Next up, we have the TAC Evolver. I think this is gonna go along with the Holger. It's gonna go above it. It's good. This thing was decent when it first came out, but there are better LMGs than it. You know, it came out, I feel like people don't even remember this thing coming out. I remember it coming out, but I don't remember too much about it. So I think it's gonna go a high C. It was, again, not as good as the Ram 7, but, you know, it's still a decent weapon, so I think a high C is fitting for this weapon and the Holger 26. The Pulemyot 762 was a ton of fun to use, especially early on in Warzone. It was insane, low recoil, really good damage, and all that shit. It's a lot of fun to use in multiplayer too. It's one of my favorite LMGs in multiplayer. So with all that, I think I'm going to put it mid B tier. Now for the Bruin MK9, this weapon was very similar to the Pulemyot. It actually competed with it a lot in early Warzone and early stages of MW3 multiplayer. It had faster fire rate with a little bit more recoil but less damage and better mobility though. So it was kind of like you trade off for low recoil, high damage, slower fire rate and bad mobility, or high fire rate, high recoil with better mobility. So I think I'm going to put it right next to the Pulamyot. Next up, we have the DG58 LSW LMG. This thing is a sleeper. I hear no one talking about this weapon. This thing was really good in Warzone for a couple seasons, but no one talks about it in multiplayer. Ever since it got its conversion kit in multiplayer, this thing is insane. Because of it being an LMG, it has really good damage and range and things. It has nice fire rate, but the conversion kit lowers its magazine size and basically turns it into an AR. And I am gonna let my opinions and my personal beliefs of this weapon get the best of me. This thing's going in S tier. I actually think it's better than the Rival 9. This thing is insane, and I believe it's going to be one of those weapons that rules over MW3 multiplayer for the rest of the game's life. It is insane, and I might make a video on this thing and how good it is. It deserves at least low S tier. And for the cast-off LSW, this weapon is insane, and its underbarrel attachment completely broke every single other LMG in the game, making them just busted. You can literally play Black Ops 6 Omni movement in MW3 before Black Ops 6 come out. That's how insane this thing is. It makes it a hipfire/tac stance demon. It's really fun to use, but I'm not sure about longevity, and I don't think it's very good in Warzone. At the moment, it was when it launched, so I think I'm going to put it low A. Next up, we have the TAC Eradicator. This thing's pretty nice. It's just a better version of the TAC Evolver here, but it's not amazing like the LSWs or stuff like that. I think it's going to go in B tier, but I can't really think of where to put it. It was a really nice ground loot weapon to get. It's got very low recoil and nice fire rate, along with the damage. Remember this thing being a pretty good beam, pretty good in Warzone for a small period of time. I think I'm going to put it here, mid B. I might come back to this weapon, but I think a mid B right now is okay. And finally, we move on to the last set of primary weapons in this game. Starting off with the snipers here, we got the Cat. This thing is nice. I love this weapon. It's actually one of my favorite snipers in the game. It was really good in Warzone. It was a one-shot for quite some time. I think it came back as a one-shot too. I'm gonna put it right here. I'm gonna put it above the LSW because I'm not sure how good the LSW is in Warzone. So I think I'm gonna put it here in A tier, mid A tier. This thing was really nice, a lot of fun to use in early Warzone, and for some reason it's just a lot of fun and pretty satisfying to use in multiplayer. Then we have the KV Inhibitor. This is probably the final D tier weapon. This might be one of the worst weapons in the game. This thing sucks. It's really weird to use. It's like a semi-automatic sniper. It's like a worse version of the KVD Enforcer, where I put that here, low C. It's just terrible. It's just a really bad sniper. I don't even know if it belongs in the game. I think it's still decent. It one-shots at a pretty good range and stuff. It sucks in Warzone. So I think a D tier for this weapon, and I think it's gonna be the last D tier weapon. Next up, we have the XRK Stalker. I know a lot of people like quickscoping with this thing, and it was pretty good in Warzone for some time. I think a high B is where this thing's gonna go. I think it was one of the other one-shot snipers at one point. A lot of fun to use. It's a really good weapon to quickscope with, pretty satisfying. I have a nice class that my friend gave me. I like it a lot. It's worse than the Cat, because the Cat was, better in Warzone and multiplayer for longer, but this thing was definitely fun. I think a high B is pretty fitting. The second to last sniper here is the Longbow. This thing, I struggle because it's a lot of fun to use in multiplayer for quickscoping, but it was never good. It was never going to be good in Warzone. I don't know. I think it's gonna go low B, right with the MTZ Interceptor. I think the MTZ Interceptor might be better because it was good in Warzone. I think this thing, actually, I'm gonna put the Ram 7 in B tier and put this thing below it at top of C. Not that it's an inherently bad weapon. It's pretty fun to use, especially quick scoping. I see a lot of people pair it with the Kar 98K, but it's just slower in every way and worse in every way compared to the Kar 98K. It was never good in Warzone, so I think high C is okay. That might be a hot take, but yeah, I think I'm going to put it there. The final sniper and the final primary of this game and for this ranking is going to be the Moors. This thing was dumb. I don't even know why they thought, you know, one of its, I think barrels or ammunitions was a good idea. It could literally shoot through the ground and one-shot someone. So, you know, aimbotters literally could destroy lobbies with this thing in Warzone. So I think, honestly, this is going to be above the XOK Stalker. And I think because of how dumb it was, actually, no, I was thinking about putting it in low A, but I think high B is good. And finally, we move on to the secondaries here. There aren't a ton. I'm really confused why they didn't add a pistol, because we're on that right now. They never added a DLC pistol, but I'm okay. It's whatever. Let's start with the Core 45 here. It's just mid. It's pretty good in hardcore, and pretty good in core. I loved using this thing dual wield when going for my Grandmastery, so I think low B is pretty fitting for this thing. Next up, we have the Renetti. S tier. This is an S tier weapon, especially with its conversion kit. Literally makes it an SMG. Actually better than the Rival 9. This thing's insane secondary. You can literally run an AR or whatever you want in multiplayer and then have a secondary SMG with this thing. It was so crazy. And this thing was really good for like a season or so in Warzone with its conversion kit. Incredible. And just the base Renetti is really good. Dual wield as well, and even single. A lot of people use it in multiplayer. I think people do use it in multiplayer ranked. It's insane. So I think in S tier, this is definitely the best pistol in the game. It had the best longevity, and it deserves an S tier. Now for the tier. Like most revolvers in every COD, they're only really good dual wield with snake shot, and this thing was just that. It was pretty good in zombies like that, but then they nerfed it and they just weren't as good anymore. And they were good for a few weeks in Warzone with snake shot, but then they of course nerfed them really fast because they're too broken, and ever since then it's been pretty much useless, but I would say it's still okay. So I'm going to put it mid B tier, in between the MTZ and the Ram 7, and I'm actually going to move the Ram 7 over the MTZ Interceptor. The final pistol in the game here is going to be the Stingers. These things were a lot of fun to use. I think this is going to go above the core. This thing isn't necessarily terrible, but it isn't amazing either. I don't think it was ever good in Warzone. Actually, we know, was it? I don't know. Someone let me know down in the comments below if it was any good in Warzone. But I think I'm going to put it low B. This is a pretty mid weapon. The RGL, really a pain in the ass to use in multiplayer. It was never going to be good in Warzone. It was good in zombies with the deadbolt detonators, but I mean, I think a lot of the launchers are gonna go down here in C tier. Next up, I'm just gonna rank these really fast here. Next up, we have the Stormender. This thing literally couldn't kill anyone, but with its new shotgun conversion kit that came out a little bit ago, I'm gonna put this along with the RGL. I'm actually going to put it above the RGL. And actually, with that shotgun conversion kit, because it's pretty good at destroying the streaks, but with the conversion kit, it actually is, like, deadly. It's a crazy shotgun. I'm actually going to put it... I'm going to put it with the longbow. I know it's pretty crazy, but I'm going to put it with the longbow. The bow, really fun to use. This thing's awesome. It was really good in Warzone. It was a one-shot in Warzone for a period of time. I think I'm going to put this, I'm going to put this with the, I know I'm putting it pretty high here. I'm going to put it with the, I'm going to put it above the bow. This thing's a lot of fun to use in multiplayer. It's really, really fun. And like I said, it was a one-shot in Warzone for some time. And it's just a really unique weapon. For a bow not to be a streak and actually to be a weapon is really cool. And I'm happy that they added a weapon like this It's, again, a lot of fun to use. It's really unique, and I mean, even just based off of the weapon itself, deserves a high or mid B tier. And finally, we have the melees, the final set here. We're going to go with the Karambit first. I'm going to keep these short and simple as they're all melees. There's not much to them. The Karambit, I'm going to put, I think, mid-C. A lot of these things are going to go mid-C. We're going to put that mid-C. The Sledgehammer, they destroyed its mobility. A lot of fun to use. Had really good range and stuff, but they destroyed its mobility for no reason. So, unfortunately, with how bad it is, it's going to have, or now, after its nerf, it's going to have to go, I think, bottom C. The Gladiator was really cool, especially with the Kong glove from Godzilla. Really, really fun, cool concept. And I think I'm going to put that right there with the Karambit, right behind it here. The Soul Render, really cool. I actually think this is going to go above the... I think this is going to actually go B tier. This is really cool. I love the fact that you can execute someone if you use your right trigger ability and left trigger is just a normal melee. It's just a really cool weapon. It reminds me a lot of the Theory song from BO3 and BO4, so I think low B is cool with that one. The Gutter Knife's awesome with that chocolate bar, and the candy lollipop blueprint is pretty cool, but it's pretty mid. I think I'm going to put it above the Gutter Knife, or the Gladiator, my bad. It's just a mid C tier weapon, like most of these melees. The Spear is really cool. This thing's really, really fun. I think this is going to go right there and actually above the Soul Render. I think it's awesome. Just like the bow, the concept of the gun or the weapon is really, really cool. The fact that you can throw the spear is awesome. And also just normal melees, that has a lot of range. You know, the fact that you can throw the spear makes it give it a lot of range. But even just normal melee is awesome. So I think a low C is, perfectly fine. I'm going to make a few adjustments to this list as we're now done here. There's a few things I want to change after looking over this thing. I think I'm going to swap the SVA 545 and the MTZ 556. They're both good, but I think the SVA was just better in Warzone than the MTZ. I'm also going to make quite a bit of changes here to the B tier here. I think I'm going to move the DM56 down below the Pulamiat and Bruin MK9. And then I want to put the Holger below the Baz-B and SOA Subverter, as the Baz-B and Subverter did have a very small stint at being good in Warzone, unlike the Holger here. I think the HRM9 is actually going to go above the Bal 27, as this thing was really good in Warzone, and the Ram 9 is going to follow suit right there. Those things are really good in Warzone for a good period of time, so they're going to go there. And then I think the final change I'm going to make to B tier here is the Ram 7. This thing is going to go above the TAC Eradicator, as it was really fun and really good to use in Warzone during its stint, so I think it fits there. It did make a big leap from, high C to mid B here, so I think that's fitting. Thank you guys so much for watching. That is my full MW3 weapons tier list. If there's any changes you would make or any hot takes I had, make sure to let me know down in the comments below. I don't know everything about all these weapons. I've used them all and I have all the camos on them, but I haven't, spent a lot of time with some of them. So make sure to let me know if there's anything, I should change. If you did enjoy watching, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, as I would really appreciate it, and turn on post notifications for future uploads, as I'm currently doing my Black Ops 6 Dark Matter camo grind. I will get that guide out fast for you guys, as I want to show you the best way to unlock that camo. Anyways, I'm Geothermals, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.